After Sunday's loss to the Falcons, we're not just talking about a lost season. We're not just talking about firing Dennis Allen. We have to talk about the unfortunate reality of this Saints team, this specific Saints team, might have one of the most bleak outlooks in all of the NFL. I'll discuss here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. It's your host, Chris Vogel, and as always, we're brought to you by Scott Vicknair. Injury lawyers have been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore. Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So I've spent the last 24 hours complaining, nonstop, roasting, blasting, whatever you want to use, whatever verb, when it comes to guys like Dennis Allen and Derek Carr, because I think at this point, they're worth no good to the Saints. If anything, all they do is push back and set back the timeline of what this team needs, which really is just a restart. They've needed it for a couple years now, and it's never been more apparent than it is this Monday. 5-6 in the worst division in football, having a cupcake of a schedule. They're under 500, and if the playoffs started today, they would not be in first place in the NFC South. That is the reality of what happens when you have Dennis Allen as your head coach and now Derek Carr as your quarterback. And a lot of pressure will be on them, and a lot of pressure should be on them, but the one guy that should have the most pressure in the building has to be Mickey Loomis. I hinted about this a little bit yesterday, and I'm going to talk about it more in light today. It all falls on Mickey Loomis. And it doesn't mean it falls on him today. Doesn't mean it falls on him in a couple of weeks from now. It falls on him the minute this season ends for him to do what's right for the franchise. Not for him to do what's right for his feelings. Not what's right for him to do for his friendships. What's right for the franchise. And what's right for the franchise is to say, I got to get rid of the head coach. Because the head coach might be a really good guy. I know he's a very good defensive coordinator. Is a god-awful head coach. Arguably the worst in the league. 20-44 in his career. And now some people will say, well, Chris, maybe that's a little unfair. A lot of those losses came to Oakland. Fine. He's 12-16 with the Saints right now in a division that last year had a winner of 8-9 with Tampa Bay, and a division that this year could very well have 8-9 as the winner. So if Dennis Allen can't win the NFC South when it's at its absolute lowest, we expect this to get better with an aging roster, with a quarterback who isn't very good. And by the way, that quarterback was handpicked by Dennis Allen. Handpicked. So if the excuse last year was Jameis, and Lord knows Dennis Allen scapegoat the hell out of Jameis last year, he got his quarterback he wanted. And his quarterback's worse. His quarterback's on pace for less than one touchdown per game this year. Less than one touchdown per game this year. Has had more tantrums than successful drives. Who gets paid $40 million a year, but once you hit the red zone, that's it. We can't play this guy. What the hell is that? What scenario, what team does that where you get to the red zone and you go, well, now I can't play my starting quarterback? That's what the Saints have done. So Mickey Loomis, if you're so obsessed with having the success that Sean Payton and Drew Brees had, without Sean Payton and Drew Brees actually in the building, then you got to get rid of Dennis Allen. And that's not going to fix everything. And the Saints could get this thing wrong yet again. They could bring in the wrong coach to replace Dennis Allen. And he could be worse. Who knows? But you got to get DA out of the building once the season's over. You got to find a way to give the Saints some glimmer of hope. Because I looked around, there is no hope for this Saints team right now. I can look at bad teams in this league, and I think there is a glimmer of hope. I look at the Chicago Bears, they're god-awful. But they have the Panthers' #1 pick, and they got their own pick, which is in the top 5. So yeah, the Bears are god-awful. But man, maybe Caleb Williams is coming. Or maybe Drake May is coming into Chicago. And they have that kind of franchise potential that they need at the quarterback position that could get them on the right track. And they're definitely going to fire their head coach who's not cut for the job. And he was only there for 2 seasons. So the Saints have zero excuse to keep DA. Josh McDaniels got fired in the middle of the season. Cost the Raiders a lot of money. So I don't want to hear how much it may cost them to move on from DA. You got to do it. Because as long as DA is the head coach at 20-44 with a career record, and as long as Derek Carr is the quarterback who DA picked who apparently can play like crap but have zero consequences or zero worry about job security, they will never win anything. And I was wrong. I thought Derek Carr would give the Saints a little bit of a lift. I didn't expect him to be Superman. I expect him to be a complimentary piece. He's holding the team back. And we know he won't get benched. That's DA's guy. They don't want to. And that's fine at this point. I've accepted it. Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback the rest of the season. But this can't go on any longer after this year. Dennis Allen has to get fired. The Saints have to take a long, hard look at drafting a quarterback. Because that could be the glimmer of hope they need. Because right now, there's no saving grace on this team. None. They're not winners. They can't win the division when it's at its lowest. And we got to sit here as fans and hope it gets better. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. You're prolonging the inevitable. And the worst part about all of this, and it's also why I can't stand this Dennis Allen tenure, is he's been so bad and the roster's been underperforming to the point where the talking heads that make fun of the Saints for kicking the can down the road, who say they're doing nothing, they're just trying to push the cap situation and make it worse just to be an irrelevant team that's hovering around 500, they're all right. They're all right. This team messed up. And that's where we're at. And it's not going to get any easier, guys, as I get into kind of the next topic here. This schedule, I'm not saying it's a gauntlet because there's been no gauntlet of a schedule this year for the Saints. If anything, it's been just a cakewalk after a cakewalk after a cakewalk, but apparently they keep stumbling over their own 2 feet during that walk. It's going to get a little bit difficult, though. You got a Lions team that I think is going to beat the shit out of the Saints. And I just really feel that way. Lions team coming off a loss, trying to redeem themselves in the NFC standings. Saints team looking demoralized. A couple of injuries, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Yeah, I could see this being a blowout. I can see it being a blowout. After that, Panthers-Giants. Panthers are terrible. There's probably a win. But will they beat the Giants? Now, you may laugh. You may say, oh, Tommy DeVito's not going into New Orleans and beating the Saints. Why? The Saints aren't a dominant home team anymore. Not under Dennis Allen. The Saints don't have the better coach in that matchup. Brian Daboll's a much better coach. And the funny thing is, I don't think Tommy DeVito's a starting quarterback. But Tommy DeVito has 7 touchdowns in 5 games, and Derek Carr's got 10 in 11 games. That's how bad the Saints offense has been with Derek Carr. So I don't know. Maybe they lose that game. What I know for sure is after that Giants game, they will lose to the Rams. The Rams with McVay will outcoach the crap out of DA. They'll outcoach him, and that'll be enough. And then you got Bucks, Falcons to finish the year. Do you expect them to win both? I don't. So I think at best this is an 8-9 football team. At best. And they could be worse. And if Mickey Loomis thinks that's okay, if you think that merits bringing back DA, then he's got to get fired too. And if Gail can't see that this fan base is fucking miserable right now, then she's delusional too. And I want to make that very clear. For people who think it doesn't matter what kind of product you put out, all that matters is money. Bullshit. You think the Saints like hearing everyone dunk on them this morning? Everyone say how they have no future? The QB stinks, the head coach stinks, the roster's aging, the defense, which was their calling card, is no longer that good? How does that help anyone? There is nothing redeemable about this team, and I think this schedule could maybe put them out of their misery. And that leads me to my third and final point. Saints fans don't want to hear this. I didn't want to hear it a couple weeks ago. And I know the older fans who claim they've been through far worse don't want to hear it. The Saints may need a collapse to spark change. Because the Saints had an embarrassing loss yesterday to the Falcons. And we get reports and hear about if the Saints keep losing, the seats could get very hot for Dennis Allen and everyone else. Could? They're not already hot? You're saying a coach who is 20-44, a coach who is 4 games under 500 so far in New Orleans in the worst division in football, a coach who cannot beat a team over 500 to save his life? That guy's seat's not hot? With the quarterback he picked? With the defense he assembled? That's okay? Interesting. Because there's teams around the league that have winning records, teams around the league that have done a lot more with their coaches that could fire them. I don't think he's a very good coach, but the Bills could fire Sean McDermott this offseason. And this man has been over 500 of just about every season in his Bills tenure. But DA can get another pass. So this is why I say this. A collapse might be the best thing for the Saints. It'll hurt in the short term. It'll be embarrassing. Sundays will be miserable. But they're always going to be miserable as long as Dennis Allen's in this building. They're always going to be miserable as long as Mickey Loomis thinks, I think we could squeeze another year out of DA. Because guess what's worse than the Saints finishing this season with like a 6-11, a 7-10 record? You know what's worse? Bringing back DA. Because here's the sad reality. Some teams, they get to go into the offseason, their fan bases could talk about potentially winning a Super Bowl. 49ers, Eagles, even the Lions now, Cowboys, Chiefs, Ravens, Dolphins, all those type of teams. The Saints aren't one of them. You're joking yourself. You're absolutely joking yourself if you think they can. And they won't be anytime soon. And I don't wake up to be a negative Nancy and things like that this morning. I don't want to be. But the truth of the matter is, they're going nowhere anytime soon. And the sooner they accept that this roster is broken, the sooner they accept that their coaching staff isn't good, the sooner they accept that they don't have a franchise quarterback, the faster we can get on the path to a rebuild. And that's what this team needs. And rebuilds aren't fun. Rebuilds aren't necessarily fast. And for every CJ Stroud you have, there's a Davis Mills. There's a bad coaching tenure. There's something in the mix. Could very well be the Panthers, who might be the only team with maybe a worse outlook than the Saints. And I don't even know if it's worse, because if Bryce fixes his stuff, then all of a sudden they're back on the right track. But a collapse needs to happen at this point. They're building nothing, and they're falling into the abyss of being irrelevant. That's what the Saints are right now, irrelevant. And it pains me to say, I hate it. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but this team isn't going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon. This team's not going to be a playoff contender anytime soon. It's okay to let go. The Saints had a really, really nice run from 2017 to 2020. Sean Payton left. They try to keep it together. You're getting your answers. It's not. So Mickey Loomis, fix it. And if you're not ready to fix it, if you're not ready to move on from DA, then you can get the hell out of New Orleans. That's the truth of the matter. We'll be back right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast to get your comments in just a minute. Before we do that, though, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook.
In the NBA, the game can change in an instant, but no matter how the action unfolds, you know DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code BOOT. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code BOOT. The crown is yours.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program on this Monday. We greatly appreciate it. Going to get into comments that you guys have, and we'll go from there. Danny T04, mediocre old team. The Saints are such an embarrassment of a loss. Honestly, no words. This team is a disappointment. Season is over and everyone is hurt. Just tank for a top draft pick. New OC, head coach. I agree. I know people don't like it. I know this team's not going to tank. Teams don't tank. Football players don't tank. So we could throw that out the window. But they need everything new. New coach, new quarterback, new offensive scheme. All of it. All of it needs to change. And I hope it will. And we'll see if it does. But I agree. This is an embarrassment of a team. They're aging. They have nothing to hang their hat on. And we just got to sit here and watch. Jim says this isn't going away anytime soon. The Saints are in a salary cap prison and are old. This will take years to fix. Start dumping now and accumulate as many draft picks as you can. I don't disagree with that. This team is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think for them, the rebuild is going to take forever. It's unfortunate. It stinks. But this is the spot you put yourself in. And I hate when the cap people get to be right. But the cap people, for once, are going to be right. Now, what the Saints did and when they got dunked on all those years, those people were wrong. The Saints are trying to mortgage the future to win now with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. And it made all the sense in the world. And if the Saints could do it again, guess what? I would. Because you're a blown tackle, a missed call, all those things away from potentially having another Super Bowl. So the Saints made the right decision at the time. No doubt about it. But at this point, there's no right decisions for this. Prolonging Cam Jordan's Saints career, restructuring contracts to kick the can down the road, it's not worth it anymore for this team. For what? They're not winning anything. Tamika says, Garbage sucks. He's not a leader and cannot play. Dumb mistake paying to worst red zone quarterback in the NFL all that money. Yeah, he's not a leader at all. He's not. I was wrong. I thought he'd be a decent leader for the Saints. I thought he'd give them some leadership at the quarterback position. He's a fraud. Derek Carr's a fraud. To sit there yesterday at the podium, well, the safety, I didn't expect him to break down on that. He didn't do his job. He's not supposed to do that. Bull fucking shit. The coverage that the Falcons had was so their safety can be a little bit more, I'd say, I don't want to say risky, but can be a little bit more aggressive in that spot. And you predetermined to throw to Shaheed, who wasn't even open on the play, and you got picked off. And the entire game changed right there. The Saints had a chance to go up 10-0, and then they were down 7-3 at the end of the first. And that's on you, $40 million quarterback, sitting there telling the Falcons, oh, great play, this and that. That's the first time I ever congratulated a player for making the wrong play. Get the fuck out of here, Derek Carr. I'm so tired of Derek Carr's bullshit. He comes to the podium. He starts preaching this and that. Never takes accountability. Never takes accountability for shit. And let's be real. He's cost the Saints more than he's helped the Saints this year, and it hasn't been close. It hasn't. And I'm tired of him. I see his family members are blocking people on Twitter like the fucking losers they are at this point. It is what it is. Accept it. He's not good right now. He's not good enough. And now Saints fans are the problem? We've been here before Derek Carr. We'll be here after Derek Carr. I'm tired of him, man. I have not disliked a quarterback for the Saints as much as I've disliked Derek Carr. And it has nothing to do with the guy that he is. It has to do with the fact that he's not playing well and then not taking accountability on top of it. Margaret says, coaches need to go and the defense needs to get younger. It is going to be painful, but so is this shit. I agree. I think this is the worst it gets. This is the worst it gets. And honestly, can it get worse than this? Because the more they lose, probably the better the chances of DA getting fired, and that's probably a good thing. So I think this might be rock bottom. Jamal says, do you think we need to draft a first-round QB next year? I think they need to draft a first-round quarterback next year if they love that prospect. I always want a young quarterback in the building for the Saints. It's something they could build around. I think us fans kind of deserve to have that quarterback that we could have for the next 10, the next 12 years. But I am not a fan of just drafting one to draft one, especially that high. You got to love the guy. And if you do, then you always send in the card. But you got to have the balls to do it. Got to have the balls to do it because Derek Carr is going to be on this roster next year, whether we like it or not. So the Saints have the guts to say, hey, this is going to piss him off, and we don't care, and get the guy that they want, if they want that guy. John says, if I thought going 5-12 meant the firing of the coaching staff, I'd be okay with it. Problem is, I don't think that'll happen. So I might as well hope the Jets beat the Falcons and the Saints win. See, I think if the Saints bottom out, I think DA is fired. I think the Saints get close to bottoming out. I think DA is getting fired. I think the Saints at the bye and why they put out so much of that goodwill, spreading positivity, talking about DA being the great unknown, which bullshit, and how this team could really turn it around and they might not fire him if they're close. That's because I think they genuinely thought they'd look different after the bye. They look the same. They're the same. I said it last week. I'll say it again. The Saints are one of the only teams this year that has shown zero development. Zero. They've either gotten worse or they've stayed the same from week one of being a boring-ass team that hopes their defense could pitch a shutout. Put Mickey on the hot seat. Yeah, look, Mickey's going to be there, man. I've been saying just lose out and draft a young mobile QB and fire DA. I agree with you, man. Got a super chat here from Ed. Thank you for the support. Ed says, I want them to lose, man. Like the quicker you lose, the quicker lose the quicker you rebuild. I don't want a playoff team and that man coming back. Yeah, look, I don't want the Saints making a run at this point for the playoffs. And by the playoffs, I mean making a run to the playoffs, not in the playoffs. I will always take a run in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. But this team can't make a run in the playoffs. We know they can. They can't beat the Falcons. They're going to beat the Cowboys wild card weekend. That's a joke. They'll get stomped out. And the closer they get to potentially being a playoff team this year, the worse it is for us. Because if DA comes back, I promise you this will be the most miserable offseason us Saints fans have had in over a decade, well over a decade. Because there will be no hope. You know where they're going with DA. You know they're going nowhere fast. You know that they're not going to win anything. And we're stuck. We're stuck pretty much. So I agree with you. I want them to lose. If someone thinks that I'm being a bad fan, I'm actually being a good fan because I want them to lose for the better of this team. Because what's good for this team is getting DA out of the building. What's good for this team is getting a coach in that says Derek Carr's not my quarterback. I could bench him if he's not playing well. That's what's good for the Saints. Not a coach who's walking around the sideline, not showing any emotion, not giving a damn, and thinking it's okay to keep playing Derek Carr when it's clearly not. Alex says, will be very Saints-like to lose to Atlanta, beat Detroit, followed by a stacking wins post-game locker room speech from DA, and then lose to either or both of Carolina and the Giants after that. It would be on brand. It would be on brand. Jay says, got to look forward to rants now. It's never anything positive. I'll be mad during the game then. After that, I don't even trip. That's fair. I mean, look, when I watch these Saints games, I really don't, I don't want to say I don't give a shit. I obviously give a shit. I don't exhaust or expend any emotion during the game. Now, when I'm on the mic, that's a different story because I got to let it off. I got to let out some steam. But during the actual game, no. Got a super chat here from Carl Marky Marks. Thank you for the support, man. He says, this is the worst team to be a fan of now. I feel trapped. Everyone knows what needs to be done except leadership. Loomis is not going to fix this, and we're not winning anything with him at the helm. I also agree with that. Now, I have been under the contingency of you fire Mickey Loomis if he's not ready to get rid of DA, and maybe that's unfair of me. Maybe you should just get fired regardless. But the two guys that led the charge for the Saints are no longer in the building. And as time goes on, the more you realize it was Sean and Drew and not Sean and Drew and Mickey. And that's okay because we had that time and that time was great. But the Saints got to get younger. They got to get smarter. There are so many innovative teams right now. The Saints are not one of them. And I agree with you. I do feel trapped as a fan too because I can't look at you guys with a straight face and say that DA is definitely going to get fired, that Mickey's going to make changes, and if Mickey doesn't make changes, Mickey will be gone. Because I think the Saints are comfortable with where they're at. I think the Saints are at this point where they feel like it's okay to value continuity and stability, but that is stupidity. Continuity is only worth having for the sake of positive results. When you're not getting said positive results, there's no reason to have that continuity. Yet the Saints continue to do it. They've looked the same for the last, 11 games, 17 last year. The last 28 games, they've looked the same. They're not good. They won't be good under DA. And Mickey thinks that's okay, apparently. Super chat from Omar Fit. Thank you for the support, man. He says, it's time we break out the paper bags, make the front office, make a change. Look, I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Not showing up to the Dome would definitely be a start. Ticket prices for the Dome going down would definitely be a start. There are things that would really turn maybe their heads. One of them would be not having great fan attendance. One of them would be continually voicing your displeasure with the product because that's what it is. It's a product and it's a bad one right now. So I think that's where we could start. I don't know if that's going to fix the, I don't know if that's going to fix the problem. I think at this point, the only fix is losing out. And that's the truth of the matter. But this is the worst spot to be as a fan right now. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And I know some people will say, well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. I love the Saints. I've loved the Saints my entire life. I'll continue to love the Saints. But this DA version, this Derek Carr version, this Mickey Loomis value and continuity over winning, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. Going into more comments here. Alex says, you called it out yesterday, but to bench Taysom after his fumble was coaching malpractice. He's been one of the few bright spots this season, and his teammates love him. Weird double standard from DA. That was Taysom Hill's first fumble in 3 years, and it was a bad fumble, and I understand it was a bad fumble. But to bench him when your quarterback hasn't been any good, and the only touchdown pass he threw yesterday was the other team, and he's allowed to keep his job, bullshit. Margaret says the Saints need new coaches. Coaching matters. Look at what Peyton's doing in Denver. Yeah, Peyton went from 0-3 to 6-5. But we know he's a damn good coach. Goonie 300 says, rather go through the growing process and pains and watch this outdated football. I agree. Tamika says, fire Pete and DA and bench Garbage. Sorry ass, we need accountability. I can't disagree there, but there's going to be no accountability here. Alex says, I'd have some hope if we were going to take a quarterback with their first round pick. We all know will be a defensive end or linebacker, which are still needs, obviously, but can't win anything in this league with a bad QB. I agree with you. Margaret says, have you heard anything about all the injuries? The only one we really know right now in terms of having like a definitive answer on is Olave with the concussion. Now, players have struggled to get out of concussion protocol this season compared to last year, so maybe he misses the Detroit game. Rashid Shaheed, I don't know yet. I would be shocked if he plays this week. He was in a lot of pain with the quad injury, and I think quad injuries are going to linger, so I expect him to miss time. As for the offensive lineman, it seems like Ramchek's okay. McCoy, we'll see. And I think Jawan will be okay as well. Alex says, do you think 8-9 and losing a tiebreaker with Atlanta for the division gets DA canned, or does it need to be 7-10 or worse? I think it needs to be 7-10 or worse. That's how sad it is, by the way. We're in a point where I think them being 8-9 will not cut it. 8-9 and not winning division. They're just going to sell themselves on saying, yeah, no, it's fine. We got the pieces. We'll figure it out. It's a joke, man. New Daylight Presents says, Marvel like the Saints has to step up in 2024. They killed so many characters. Everything I love is going to shit, man. You guys know I was a huge Marvel fan. Marvel's been ass. The Saints have been ass. I mean, there's some things that are good, like, Invincible's been awesome. Seen some great movies this year, like Holdovers or Oppenheimer or Spider-Verse. But, man, yeah, good analogy there. Both got to step up in 2024. I'm sure if I had to pick one, though, it would be the Saints if I wanted one to get revitalized. Alex says, really cool rose shirt, by the way. Thank you. The weirdest comeback I've seen in my life is Abercrombie. I never expected it. I used to remember when they had that big-ass moose as their logo, and I'd get their stuff back then in high school. Well, not high school. Junior high. And they made a comeback. They got some pretty cool stuff. I got like a Rose Bowl one, a Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl. They actually made a Saints one, too. I have one of those that I wear sometimes on the stream. But not only they look cool, like they're comfortable as hell. But yeah, Ed says this offense is outdated. I agree, Ed. But like grossly outdated. Goonie 300 says, fuck Sean Payton, but when he was here, I felt like we had a chance every year. I just never feel like that with Dennis Allen. I agree wholeheartedly, man. And I'm okay with it. People could say screw Sean Payton because he left, and you'd be entitled to that opinion. But you also have to acknowledge that we were winners with him, and you are doing that, and I commend you for acknowledging that because it is the truth. Ed says 20-44 and the seat's not hot. LOL. Nuts, man. Absolutely nuts. Alex says, thoughts on AK's post-game about inconsistency yesterday? Feels like he's speaking for all the leaders in the locker room. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that, Alex. I forgot to bring that up. One of the things I wanted to bring up, I forgot to say. So this is the quote from Alvin that he's referring to. I just feel like there's too much talking about what we need to look like. We need to find a real fix, not just, we got to be better. We want to get better every week. That's obvious. Let's get past that. How are we going to get better? Now, Saints reporters, Saints fans could say that that's not a shot at the coaching staff. He's calling out the coaching staff because the head coach always comes to the podium and talks about, we got to get better. We got to clean this up. We got to clean that up. And they never fucking do. And I think that's what Alvin's saying towards the end. How are we going to get better with that question that he asked? That's to the coaching staff. The players are doing what they can with the source material they have that's not very good. And they're looking at the coaching staff and saying, okay, how can you fix it for us? How can we make this better? And they don't got an answer. And I've said it before, Alvin's the best interview that you can get from the Saints because he is the guy that's going to come to the podium and say what he's thinking, what he's feeling, regardless about what people think. And I think that was a question for the coaching staff. How are we going to get better? Because you keep talking about getting better, but how are we going to do it? And they got no idea. Goonie 300 says, AK talking about the coaches. I agree. Japanese Hercules says the games where the Saints wear black helmets, they lose, ban the black helmets. Yeah, that was like the kiss of death yesterday. Them putting it on is like, they're probably going to lose anyway, but that was just the tail sign. Wesley says, this is the most depressing it's been to be a Saints fan since the Hazlitt days. Going to be really hard to even watch. Want to turn on the TV next week to watch the Lions have a get-right game. Yeah, it's tough. And you know that's coming. Goonie 300 says, at least the Panthers got hope. LOL. We know we're not going anywhere with the QB and staff. I agree. At least they have a quarterback with unknown potential. We know what we got. It's not very good. Alex says that missed throw to Shaheed that you retweeted was very alarming. A 10-year veteran shouldn't miss that by that much. I agree. And the thing is, he misses that. If he hits Shaheed in stride, Shaheed could go the distance. But no, he throws it behind him. Shaheed has to make the adjustment. A couple plays later, you lose Shaheed to an injury. Reese says, can you tell me to stop betting on the Saints every weekend? Thank you. I can't. I can't tell you to stop because you never know. Maybe you'll hit a big one at some point. But yeah, I don't know if the Saints are a team worth betting on. And I am a betting man. So on Sundays, you will find me kind of sitting there on DraftKings, seeing what we got for other games. For example, Bills-Eagles yesterday. That was a fun one for me to bet on. I don't know. I got no read on the Saints. Ed says they robbed Peter to pay Paul, and Paul wants his money back. LOL. Fair enough. Fair enough. Eric says it's time for Kai Harley to take over as general manager to kickstart the rebuild. Possibly. Possibly. Goonie 300 says they're tanking and don't know it with Danny Allen. Brandon says, when you say the Saints have no bright future, what do you mean? We have some players I'm happy with, but got to clean out the old players. What I mean by that is the most important parts of this team are broken. No good quarterback play, no good coaching, no good offensive scheme. And yes, they do have some good players. Michael Thomas will be gone after this year. Tyrann Mathieu's getting older. Cam's getting older. DeMario's getting older. Alvin's going to get older eventually. Taysom's getting older. So yes, Olave, bright spot. Shaheed, bright spot. Lattimore, bright spot. Adebo, Alontae Taylor, Brian Brzee, bright spot. What's after that? Carl Granderson, bright spot, excuse me. There are bright spots, but a lot of them are not going to be worth a damn if the other spots where they're declining at don't get their eventual replacements in the building. At some point, Cam Jordan, DeMario won't be leading the defense. Who will step up? At some point, you need new safeties. Who will step up? At some point, you need a weapon to replace a guy like Taysom Hill, a running back to replace a guy like Alvin. Now, maybe Kendra Miller is that guy. I hope he is, but we don't know. So that's what I mean by that. I think the Saints still have a lot of nice players on this team, but there's a lot of bad with this team, and it's in the really, really important spots. Dylan says, how do we get off of Derek Carr's contract? I don't see how they get off of it this year. I think we're stuck with Derek Carr for another season. That's the truth of the matter. Ed says, miss Shaheed twice. Yeah, Carr, he was terrible yesterday. I thought that might have been his worst game. Cody says, am I the only one that doesn't expect Mickey to fire dipshit Dennis at the end of the season? First off, love that name, Cody. Dipshit Dennis might be the key. I don't think there's a guarantee at all. And I don't think you're the only one that doesn't expect it. And honestly, you have the right approach, because if we expect him to get fired and he doesn't, then we get really sad about it, you know? Wesley says, I will tolerate a couple of years of bad football if they will start over and show some spice next year with the young QB. So would I. Brandon says, Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Well, they're not going to be in the Drake May sweepstakes, so I'll immediately just say Jaden Daniels. If you're asking who's a better prospect, I think Drake May is a better prospect, but I think Jaden definitely could be a franchise quarterback. And I think that for the both of them. Jerry G, morning, Chris. Morning, Jerry. Goonie 300 says, Dennis says the same shit every game. It's exhausting, man. Exhausting. Cody says, Dennis the Menace better do some more self-scouting. The team doesn't resemble the Steelers. They're the Jets. They actually are pretty close to Jets. Jets defense is better. Saints offense is slightly better than theirs, which is sad. But at least they got Rodgers waiting in the wings. We don't got Rodgers. So I'm going to get into other comments that you guys have in just a minute. Before I do that, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, Crystal.
I need to clear something up about New Orleans. While our culinary scene might be on fire, our food has never been about heat. It's always been about flavor. And this is how New Orleans does flavor. Are we clear? Crystal, how New Orleans does flavor.
Thanks to Crystal for being part of the program. I'm going to get back into more comments that we have here on the Straight Up Saints podcast on this Monday morning. Going to go with, what do we got here? Wesley says, I'll never root for the Saints to lose, but if they lose next week, it needs to be 42-6. I could agree with that. This team needs a reality check because they're so out of touch right now, and they need one. Jerry G says, I didn't watch the press conference. It's the same old shit every week, and I'm tired of it. I agree. Japanese Hercules says, at least we're not Patriots fans. Yeah, but, at least the Patriots got 6 Super Bowls along the way. I understand what you mean, though. The Patriots are the most boring, frustrating team to watch. But, I mean, at least they'll be picking top 5. Wesley says, on Mickey, we held on to Jim Haslett for way too long as well, so we really might just be trapped until we go like 3 or 14 or something. Possibly. And if that's the case, then they got to fire Mickey too. And I'm okay with that if that's what needs to be done. Goonie 300 says we should have known when Dennis Allen got hired and said the culture already here instead of setting his own winning culture. Yeah, I agree. I don't like guys that just think they could replace what another guy did without the track record. And I thought he could just pick up the pieces. At least that's what he thought and keep it moving. And he hasn't. They just keep going backwards. Paul says Mickey Loomis will not fire his drinking buddy. He'll blame the injuries now instead of bad coaching. I agree with you, Paul. But that's why the Saints got to bottom out. And that's what they need. Honest to God, that's what they need. Havc 735 says, missing the Peyton Breeze era. So am I, man. Rob says, hate that I purchased a Sunday ticket 2 years in a row for this BS. Dude, Sunday ticket, they got to lower that price, man. I don't think it'll ever get lower. It'll probably only get higher because you got guys like us buying it, but they got to lower it, man. It's expensive. My family buys it for the 49ers games. It's a lot. Now, I mean, for them, it's worth it because the Niners are actually good, but it is a lot. Trav504 says, AK even said to let us know what the problem is when he starts coaching. Omar Fitz says, it's worse than the Haslett days. This reminds me of Ditka. I agree. Someone said yesterday the only thing DA can hang his hat on is that he's not worse than Ditka. And then that's it. Wesley says, I think Pete needs to go, but honestly, he's called plays that have been there. The Shaheed throw, that was a touchdown. That throw that concussed Olave could have been a touchdown. Carr is much more to blame right now. I agree. I think Pete is to blame for a lot of the Saints' shortcomings this year. But it wasn't yesterday. And they pay Derek Carr $40 million to hit the open man. And he hasn't been doing that. They paid him to elevate the offense. He hasn't done that. And here we are. At this point, what do you think it'll take for us to beat the Lions and win the division? Win the division, not much. I think you just need the teams behind you and the one team in front of you to keep reeling, which is possible. Beat the Lions, you're going to need a 2020 caliber Saints defensive performance. And that might not be enough. That's what you would need. But to win the division, even as bad as they are right now, not much. It's a horrible division. Wesley says, can they even move on from MT? I thought his deal was one they'll need to rework at least one more time, but it could be wrong. From the understanding I got of this, he's not coming back after this year, but maybe I'm wrong. Ed says the Saints should have groomed a QB at the end of Breeze's career. They messed that up big time. We could have had Lamar Jackson, and instead we drafted Mr. Half a Sack. Unreal. Can you imagine Lamar in New Orleans? We'd be balling. Solo says if Loomis is a GM on the level of Howie Roseman, then he should be able to rebuild the team just like he did a bunch of times. Time for Loomis to prove it. I agree. The Niners had 3 straight years of dominance with Harbaugh, made the NFC Championship game all 3 times. Get rid of him. They struggle for a couple of years. They get Kyle Shanahan and they fix it. The Eagles, get rid of Andy Reid. Find the guy in Doug Peterson after getting rid of Chip Kelly. Win a Super Bowl. It's not working anymore. Get rid of him. Get back to the Super Bowl with Nick Sirianni. It could be done if you have the right guy. Rob says this wouldn't happen if Tom's family was running the team. I tend to agree with you, man. Paul says the cheapest option is to fire Dennis Allen's ass and hire an offensive-minded coach because that team has talent. Dipshit just can't put it together. Possibly. I think that it's more than that. It starts with getting rid of him, but I think there's more problems at play too. Trav504 says the original 3 Stooges would probably lead this team better, but we got Carr, Allen, and Carmichael. Greg says, how do we interview Eric B for 8 hours and still hire Dennis Allen? Yeah, makes the hiring process look a little suspicious. Just to say. Trav504 says, I'm glad I bootleg watched the games. Smart man. Goonie 300 says Carr got all the wide receivers hurt throwing hospital balls. Michael Thomas and Olave hurt on bad throws. Shaheed potentially pulled his quad on a bad throw. So, yeah. That new nickname for DA is great. Yeah, I got to go back. Whoever said dipshit Dennis Allen, you are my hero. Because that is one of the funniest names. Here it is. It was from Cody. He said dipshit Dennis. That's amazing. Lynn Bowden made a few good plays yesterday. Hopefully, he'll be helpful next week. Yeah, I thought he was really impressive. I thought he stepped up. Shout out to him. He's been a fine player this year for them. Good run blocker. That's about all I could say in terms of this offense. Not a whole lot to like right now from this team. Wesley says, I wonder if EB was here so long because they're trying to convince him to take the job and he didn't want it. I don't think so. I think if they gave him the job, he would have taken it. I don't know why it was that long of a meeting. I don't know if that is the way the Saints operate. But I think if he wanted the job, if they offered him the job, I think he would have taken it. Head coaching job's a head coaching job. Paul says, thanks for reading all the chats. Absolutely. This is what it's here for. Kind of a little vent session for all of us. So, if you guys have comments, you guys put them in. I get them up on the screen, and we go from there. That's how I usually like to roll here. Ed says, remember when the O-line was a problem? Yeah, the O-line's not a problem anymore. So Derek Carr can throw that excuse in the trash. Kudos to Doug Marrone for figuring that side of the ball out a little bit in terms of fixing the position group. Brandon says, Panthers just fired Frank Reich. Saints better learn. Is that true? Is that true? Wow, yeah. Sucks for Frank Reich, man. That's tough. But you know what? Panthers have a quick trigger. And you got to give them respect for that at least. If they felt like it's not working, then they go and do it. So yeah, Frank Reich out. That is big time. That is big time. Sucks for him. I think he wanted CJ Stroud. I think ownership wanted Bryce Young. You're going to lose that power struggle 9 times out of 10. Carr's fumble yesterday was crazy. So careless. So careless with the football. Court Star says hashtag fired didn't sound. I agree. Jerry G, Frank Reich fired? ? Yeah, it just happened. Kudos to you guys for putting it into the chat. Yeah, Frank Reich out. And this is sorry that I'm, a little bit baffled here. I thought he'd get fired after the season. Kind of shocked it's now. So special teams coordinator Chris Tabor is going to be their interim coach. And then Jim Caldwell will move into a special advisor role working with the offense. I actually think if you're the Panthers, I'd look into Jim Caldwell as the head coach after because they need stability and they need someone who's going to kind of rally around Bryce Young. And maybe that's him. Ed says, see, everyone has balls but the Saints. David Tepper, a horrible owner, though. Yeah, David Tepper is terrible. And I want to make this clear. Just because the Panthers fired Frank Reich and I commend them for saying, hey, it's not working, we got to move on, doesn't mean their ownership group's any good. If anything, their ownership group is bad and they're impatient and there's a power struggle there. But that's how it goes. Trav 504, Frank Reich fired. What the F? What are we waiting for? I have no idea. Cody says the only reason they interviewed Eric Bieniemy for 8 hours because of the interviewing rule, and they didn't want to look like they were just trying to get past it. DA was their hire all along. Yep, that's what I was kind of alluding to when I said it was suspect. That's what I think it was. Now, we can't prove it, but that's what I think it was. Brandon says, I just saw someone talking about our cap hell. How do you think we handle this? Just draft a QB and bite the bullet with the cap? Just a lot of bad contracts for older players. I think that's the easiest thing to do. That's the best possible situation for them. But yeah, don't expect any splash signings. Don't expect anything fun. This team's in trouble. World of trouble right now. Paul says the Panthers took the wrong QB. They did. They did for sure. Court Star says DA is a worse coach than Reich. Historically, yeah, it's literally proof in the records. Now, this year, Frank Reich was not good, and I get it. But this is where they're at. This is what happens when you struggle in the NFL. Omar says no more trading up in the draft. If you're gonna trade up, stop doing it for a freaking defensive tackle from UTSA because that ain't gonna cut it. If you're gonna trade up, you gotta swing for the big boys, and that's it. Can't do anything other than that. But wow, so we got a shake up here in the NFC South. Frank Reich getting fired. Saints play the Panthers in 2 weeks. So that'll be interesting. Is that a rejuvenated Panthers squad? We shall see. Or is it more of the same old crap with them? Who knows? It's going to be very interesting. But this seems like a good point to kind of wrap up here on this Monday morning of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'll be hopping on Twitter in just a minute, continuing to share my thoughts and things of that nature regarding the firing, regarding the Saints, all that. So we'll see what happens. But just want to thank you guys as always, leaving your comments, leaving your questions, sending in some super chats. You guys are truly the best. We'll have more content here on the Straight Up Saints podcast later this week. We're going to preview the Lions game, which, oh God, that could be really tough. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, guys, enjoy your Monday if you can. I know it's frustrating. But we'll be back with more here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation. Have a great Monday, everyone.